Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at still, or late morning. My name is Tom Tobin. I'm going to be your guide for this session of Revit 2023. I'm come out of industry, basically architecture. So that's going to be my sweet spot as far as this release goes. There is something in this for everyone. This is as was mentioned, a very large release. These are the themes or the buckets that have been created in this release. So there's a lot of information. So we will not be able to get through everything in this hour. We're going to be pushing it pretty tight. So we are going to concentrate mostly on the design productivity tools and enhancements that are in there, the simulation and analysis, and documentation efficiency. So here is a list of the design productivity features and or enhancements. There's approximately 27 of these in here. Now you'll notice the kind of the big star or plus sign that I put. These are some of my personal favorites. So when you see that symbol, that icon, it's going to show that that's one of the ones that I think have been sorely needed and that we will benefit from. Within the simulation analysis, interoperability, cloud and data, design optimization, we're looking around 24 new features, enhancements, document efficiency, again, when you see the plus sign. So altogether, they've just listed here approximately 71 new features and enhancements that are available in this release, and that's not including some of the behind the scenes things that have happened. So let's just jump right into this and start with design productivity. So you can see this is one of the ones that I like. This is most striking because when we get into 23, it's one of the first things we see, and that's over in the browser. We can see that there are some icons there in front of our view names. If it's a solid filled icon, it simply means that the icon or that view has been placed on a sheet. If it's an empty icon, it means that it hasn't been placed on a sheet. And if it's a half filled icon, we're basically talking about schedules or whatnot, that it may be partially on a sheet, how that goes. Now, when I initially saw this, I was like, what is that? Wasn't sure that I liked it. To turn it off, all you have to do is right click in the browser, check the box, and it goes away, and it looks like it always did. I decided to give it a shot and work with it a little bit. And I really kind of like it. You don't have to do anything special with the project browser to get a different look. And I know immediately if something's been placed on a sheet, and I don't have to make the mistake of accidentally dragging it out and having it tell me that it's already been placed. This is an about time one for me. It says duplicate materials and its assets. In the old or previous releases, you would open up the material browser, you would right click on the material and it would say duplicate, and that's fine, you would duplicate it. But if you wanted the assets to be different, you had to go up and click the box to, in appearance here, to duplicate the assets itself, or you would be changing possibly several different materials at once. So now when we right click, we get the duplicate using shared assets, which is really the old one. And now we have the option for duplicate material and assets all in one swell swoop, which is great because although I knew that I would have to duplicate the assets, I would often forget. So this is a great tool. I think it's an about time tool. This is another about time tool that I really like. This is adding additional cuttable categories. As a matter of fact, I was just recently working on some bathroom families and trying to figure out how I could show them properly in sections and whatnot. So they've added a few more categories here. We got furniture, furniture systems, casework, specialty equipment, and plumbing fixtures. And now to do this, all we have to do is open up the family and check a box, and it will then be cuttable. This is really great. I'll actually demonstrate this to you. Another one that is fantastic that they've added is measure in 3D. And we're modelers, right? We're building a virtual model in 3D. I do a lot of work in 3D throughout the whole thing. And the idea that if I wanted to do a quick measurement on something that I had to leave my 3D view to do that, that was kind of a pain. So now I can actually measure in 3D. I can right click and activate my snaps, turn my perpendicular on, for example. I can also, they've added a hotkey, which is the control key, to allow me to do perpendicular from the start face. So this is, once again, another about time. It's going to really help us a lot. We'll look at that. Pick a work plane. This is really cool. So we often have to change our work planes when we're working. We'd have to go up and basically go to the architectural tab, go over to the work plane panel, hit set work plane, dialog work plane box would open up, and then we'd pick a plane. Well, now there's a drop down to just pick a plane. Better yet, they've now given me a key in, which is PK. We'll take a look at this. So we can quickly change our work planes now, much faster and much more efficient. This is sort of continuing on with the theme. So the view search, reference search. There's been some functionality with searching, but we can now search the view type and the target type, especially if you have a large project with a lot of views. This is very helpful. So I mentioned I'm more from the architectural side of the world, so I don't spend too much time in structure or MEP. But here's one for our structural friends, which is nice that when I place a wall architecturally and I don't designate it as a structural wall, it's immediately designated as a non-bearing wall. And sometimes that wall actually needs to have some structure in it just to hold itself up, depending on its height, its girth, you know, whatever that may be. And there wasn't a really good way to do this. You'd have to designate it as bearing, and then you could add rebar. Now you can turn it into a structural wall, designate it as non-bearing, and then you can add whatever reinforcement needs to be added in that. So you're also going to see, I'm just going to throw this out here, we'll talk about it again later, but we have the ISC coordinations with all of this. This is also a new feature. Now, nobody likes to have death by PowerPoint, so let's go ahead and let's actually take a look at the software here. So this is Revit 2023, and I just opened up the sample project that comes out of here. When we look at it, the very first things that we notice is that, one, they did go ahead and change the icon up at the top. You know, so it looks like a big blue button with a white R on it. Fantastic. Here's the browser. So we're looking at the shaded blue here, means that they've all been placed on a sheet. So all I have to do is come in here and I can right click and say show view placement on a sheet or not. So I uncheck it. It just goes back to the way that it used to look. So this is really nice. Like I said, it kind of took me by surprise when I first saw it. Wasn't sure I liked it. Kind of expanded my browser a little bit. But as I've been working with it, I've decided that I actually really do like this. You know, this visual cue to help me out. The other one that I was talking about was up here in materials. So if we come into the materials, now all I have to do is I can right click and I can say duplicate the material and the assets. Before, I would have to make sure if I duplicated it that I did come up here and tell it to duplicate the assets. Now I don't have to do that. So I can just duplicate it with the assets. Let's just change it to something else. We'll just make it blue in this case. So I've got blue, green, and red. So I'm just going to change my color here so that it does look blue. Let's just change it a little bit more there. And I'll change the type up here as well. And as soon as I hit apply, we're going to see that the assets have been duplicated. and I haven't screwed anything up. It does look like I changed the wrong one there, doesn't it? So let's, that was a good move, right? So let's rename this one. Let's just put this back to green. Well, let's undo that real quick. My apologies for messing that up. So I can duplicate this and its assets. I must have clicked into a different one there. Let's call it blue. Ah, you see, that's what happened when it moved. So let's just change this to my blue. Change it up here to my blue. And now I've got that created without messing up the other ones. See, that's what happens when you don't pre-record this, right? You do it live for you. So let's talk about the cuttable categories that I was mentioning before. I'm going to switch to a different Revit project here for us to look at. So this is an example of a public restroom, a women's restroom in this case. This is in a university. So if I were to go ahead and look at the elevation here, which is this elevation, we see all the doors. Let me go ahead and tile this so we can see this okay. There we go. And so this is great. This is exactly how this elevation was created, was to look out of here. But if I wanted the elevation or to create a section and have it inside the stall doors, we can see that really my view didn't change at all. And that's because in previous releases, I could not cut through specialty equipment or plumbing fixtures. So now all we have to do in 23 is I'm just going to come in here and select the family, and I'm going to go up into Edit Family. And this is a pretty common family. I've seen this in a lot of different offices. It is specialty equipment. All I have to do is come over to my properties and hit Enable Cutting in View. And then just load it back in. I'm not going to save this. I'm just going to load it back in. I could save it, overwrite the existing, and now, boom, all of a sudden, all of that is cuttable and my elevations look correct. Now this works with furniture systems, and plumbing fixtures and casework as well. If you weren't aware that you weren't really cutting through your casework, well, now you truly can. So I think that is a really great tool, helps us out a lot. Let's come back in here to our 3D view. And you'll notice that in 3D, up into Quick Access tool, the measure tool is not grayed out, nor in the modify, it's not grayed out. So I can go ahead and select that now. And just in 3D, I can do a quick measurement. And even up here on my ribbon, my option bar below the ribbon is going to tell me what that distance is. Now I can also turn chain on when I do this. So I can measure in a chain. So I can do that measurement. I can then come down and hit the next measurement. And I could even go across. And now on my screen, I can see all of these measurements at the same time. You know, so I could just keep going with this as far as I want and make sure everything is set the way that we want. So we can now measure in 3D, which is fantastic that we can now do that. The next one was pick a plane. So in the past, I'd have to come to my architectural tab, come over to work plane. I'd hit set the work plane. This dialog would pop up. I choose pick a plane, and then I would go ahead and choose that. Well, now I don't have to go through all that. If I'm over my architectural tab, there is a drop down under set, and all I have to do is say pick the plane. And so with that in mind, all I have to do is pick the plane, and there is the work plane. I could even now just go ahead and type in PK, and I could pick the plane that way. So very quickly, I can change the work plane that I'm on. This is fantastic. So let's pop into another file. And so this would be working with our view references. So if I come in here to place a view reference. We can see up on the ribbon, we have the view type itself now, so we can look at related views. We can do a search in here and find the different view types that we want to look at. We can do the target view, and if this is a large project, you can see that there might be a lot of views that we have to go through to find it. And going into the search, I can type in furniture, and then I can tell it to go to my furniture plan. So this is a great help as far as going through here and being able to find things rather quickly. The next tool I wanted to show is I'm just opening up a new project here. So this is just a basic project. I'm going to go to my wall tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pick, we'll just pick the 12-inch masonry. And because I'm doing this through the architectural tab, it is set it's not set to structure, and it's set to non-bearing, which as an architect may be exactly how I want this to be. So there it is. Now I can go check the structural button just like before, and it's structural. It does default to bearing, but I can now change that and tell it to be non-bearing, and I can still add some rebar covers to that as I'm working. If I were to place it straight out of the structural tab itself, it is still going to make it structural, and it's going to default to bearing. But once it's placed, I can, of course, come in and make it be non-bearing. So this is something new that has been added, gives us greater versatility in working inside of Revit 2023. Some other big enhancements that have been made is performance. So there has been all kinds of things inside or behind the scenes that Autodesk has gone to increase performance. Some of them, just to mention a couple, working with MEP elements. Users who've tried to use this have reported that Revit views, depending on the large number of MEP elements, needed to be optimized. In other words, it was working kind of slow. So in 23, we're seeing about a 25% improvement in opening and navigating views containing large numbers of MEP. Working with families, 3D imports that are in there, we've had a great improvement in there as well. Performance in linking DWGs has increased considerably. Performance when copying large numbers of elements has been increased. So, you know, we're getting 6, 7 times, 3 times better in some cases. You know, they're claiming when working with the DWG files that we can get up to 700 times the performance when linking the DWG files. So altogether, there has been a great increase in behind the scenes in the performance of the tasks that we are doing, which is of course going to help us in moving through our models a lot more efficiently and quickly. As far as the unload and reload, it's about 20% faster. Another thing that I actually like about this is that if you're working in an environment or on a model that has the same rooms repeated, so hospitality, possibly hospitals, dorms, like I was mentioning before, even office buildings that have the same types of offices through them. Revit now skips the regeneration calculation for redundant rooms. So it sees the room. If it sees the same room, it doesn't calculate it each time. So this gives us greater performance in working inside our models. Also, when we used to set, hey, you know, do we want to see the area or do we want to see the area and the volume? It always said, hey, use area, it works faster. Now that has been increased so that when we are working with volumes as well, it'll work a little faster for us as well. So another thing that has been improved is that there is now an activate button. So what that means is that there's going to be a new feature in here that's going to display our selection set differently. So in the past, whether we're working in a shared work environment or not, when we selected certain things, we'd see all the temporary dimensions, all the pins, you know, so this could slow things down. It would slow down the processing. They've added an activate button. So basically what that means is that when we come in here, and I'm just going to throw under the architectural tab, I'm just going to throw a curtain wall in here or a storefront. So I'll just throw a storefront in here. Let's go ahead and look at that in 3D. So in the past, if I would select this, we would see all the pins, everything. If I select all of this together, we would see all the dimension, temporary dimensions, all the pins. Well, now it's in the quick access toolbar and it is on my modify ribbon in the control panel. We hit activate. Now we start to see it the way that we had always seen it in the past. So now if I select that, there's my temporary dimensions, there's all the pins, and then I can work with it, but you know, it takes so much longer with regeneration. It comes defaulted off now. I have to turn that on. So now I can move this around a lot easier. I can do my selections a lot more efficiently. Another time saver that they've added is that when we are placing families that are face-based or work plane-based, it's going to remember that. So we don't have to set that every time. It's going to remember the last work plane that we used when we were placing this. Also for our structural, congratulations, we now have an updated shapes book for if you were feeling that you were lacking any. The database has been updated to version 15. It's all within Revit, so we now have all of the most current shapes that are available to us. For MEP, we've added a couple of more categories here. This is an answer to user requests or wish lists that we had a little more versatility. They have added the mechanical control devices and plumbing equipment. So out of the box from 2023, these categories have already been built in to the existing content libraries so that we can use that. So we now have a lot more versatility in the MEP categories. Also with MEP, they have improved the ability to change the connectors on or in our families. So now we can just pick new host, pick the face or the work plane, and it works very quick. Let me see, do I have that? Yeah, okay. So here is an MEP mechanical equipment. As I mentioned, I come from architecture. You know, this is out of my field a little bit, but even I can change the location now of what we're looking at as far as our connectors. So I have got a connector here. Here's the information over my properties. Once I've selected that connector, I can go up to my ribbon, say pick new host. I get face or work plane. So I'm just going to put it up here. I know that I would not put this up here, but you can see that it moved, relocated itself. If I select the connector, all the information went with it. I don't have to rework any of that. Now, what I might have to do is modify the family, the extrusions that are showing where those openings are at. So I might need to do something like that. But as far as actually moving the connector, very simple, very painless now. Another performance that they've given us is that in previous versions, if we selected a family that had a nested family inside of it, we wouldn't necessarily get temporary dimensions. We'd have to go up and we'd have to activate those on the option bar. Well, now when we select a family that has a nested family in it, the temporary dimensions pop right up. So it's really just less steps, right? I once upon a time worked in the early days of CAD where I had a manager who actually used to count the number of clicks that we would make. The more clicks we made on our mouse, the less efficient we were. That really stuck with me, so I tried to be as efficient as possible and make as few clicks as I need to make, and this just helps in that same path. So let's talk about analysis and simulation tools. There's a lot more in here than what we're going to go over, but for our structural analysis tools, it's now completely autonomous. You can choose to iterate your structural analysis workflows from Revit without actually building any physical content inside the Revit environment. This actually allows you, when starting a project from scratch, to focus exclusively on the analytical model. It works much more like the traditional analysis software outside of Revit would work. So things that you're already familiar with, we can do more efficiently within Revit without actually having any modeled elements at that point. The only thing that we will be fully parametric with is things like grids, levels, and so we can change or control the positioning using those datums as we're doing that. So this is going to allow us to get this stuff moving much more quickly. New feature altogether included in 2023. That's right. For electrical, you can now do preliminary load analysis. So this tool enables you to define boundary areas for area-based loads and equipment loads. The feature helps you capture the main loads, equipment, and distribution system requirements for the BIM projects inside of Revit. What's really cool is that you can actually use or leverage from the architect PDFs, DWGs, or Revit geometry if you want to do the calculations earlier in design, but you don't even have to have anything modeled yet. So you can do all this prior to modeling any of the electrical equipment. You can then estimate building loads throughout the distribution system without placing any physical Revit electrical families in the project. This is enabling a conceptual approach to the electrical analysis and the planning within Revit. Then that can all be tied back together. So I don't work in electricity or in the electrical field. So my understanding, though, this is something that has sorely been missing inside of Revit that has now been added in. Kind of more back into the architectural side for me, that's interactive solar studies. Now, this has been improved, was improved in 22. They added a ribbon in there, I think, in one of the point releases. The solar studies is a nice tool, but it always worked a little wonky. They've really improved the way that this goes together now. So when we're working in our designs, we can look at this. It's up on the ribbon. We can start playing with the time of day, however we're doing this to get the shadows. When we activate a solar study, of course, we get the whole menu up at the top. The ribbon, we can start advancing things by the frames, one frame at a time. We can take it forward and backwards. We can even tell this to play in a loop so that we can just sort of look at it and figure out how this is working for us. We can also work with the speed of this, the sunlight intensity and the shadow intensity. So on the slide bars, we can move the slide bars back and forth. We can actually even just come in and type a number if we want to do that. We still can do still images, single day, multi-day. So we can set this up however we want to do that, have it run through. We can set things up for the summer, for the fall. We can do a lighting analysis as to how this actually works. Play with the time on the slide bar while we're talking about it and having discussions. And as before, we can post it out to a video file, and we can look at it and see how this actually affects our designs. So the interactive solar studies have really helped us, or they've become much easier to use. So there's really no reason not to use it now. Let's talk a little bit about interoperability. And what I'm going to really focus on is FORMIT. So if you are using SketchUp, for example, to do a lot of preliminary layouts, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at FORMIT and look at that and see see how similar they are, because just about everything you know inside of SketchUp is going to translate to FORMIT pretty well. And the reason why I say that is because FORMIT and Revit, their interoperability has been getting better and better and better, and it has been greatly improved inside of 23. So we can now link, we don't have to import, we can now link the AXM FORMIT file. So we don't have to do that, and this will reflect, you know, when the link is reloaded, it'll just automatically update, or when the project is reopened. While we're actually working in Revit, you can now edit a linked FORMIT file with just 2 clicks. So we're inside of Revit, and the first thing you do is select the FORMIT link in the Revit project itself. Then you click on the new Edit FORMIT button, which is up on the ribbon that appears as soon as you select that link, and it'll open up a session of FORMIT inside of Revit. So we can actually work on those designs rather quickly, going back and forth within them. Another thing that they've done with CAD files in general, so, you know, the FORMIT files, of course, the AXMs, we got OBJs, the STLs, any 3D CAD file, even from Rhino. Now, when we link these or import them, we can tell them what level we want to bring these in at. So before it was just whatever view we were in at that particular level. Now we can tell it where we want it to come in, which is great. The other fantastic tool that has been added here is the ability to have it cut these 3D objects, these CAD files, that it couldn't do before. So now your reference plane or your reference cut plane in your project can cut the model, elevations, whatever. It is just selecting that link, that file, and going over to properties and enabling cutting in views, very much like what they added for the cuttable categories in our families. This is a great add-on. I sort of mentioned the IFC parameters earlier when I was talking about the non-bearing wall for the structure. So now we can kind of work with this a little bit better. There's been built-in IFC attributes. They've been added as not just instance, but both instance and type parameters in all the models, so we can set this up. So basically, if I pop back in here now, just go here, I can select my wall, and at the bottom are the instance properties for the IFC parameters. Okay, I can set that, and there's also in here type parameters as well. In this case, it looks like I've already assigned them there. So let's go ahead and do the instance ones so we can see that they're a little different. I'm going to say yes to doing that. What do I want this to be? It's going to pop up, and it's going to show my schema. If we're using older schemas, we can have access to those. But here are some objects. I can go with the IFC wall. What type of IFC wall is this? In this case, I'll just call it a partitioning wall, and I can say OK. It gives it its own ID here, so we can set that up and we can have greater control. So this new export mapping dialog allows us to select the IFC schema, search for the specific IFC container for an element, and predefined type, and then apply those values to elements in your model. So this can really kind of give us better control over when we are sending this stuff out into an IFC format. So let's come back in here. And let's talk about document efficiency. As I mentioned, there are quite a few things that were added in here. One of the new ones is if you ever modified subcomponents in a floor or roof, as soon as you do that and you add an elevation point or whatnot, you know that we can add a split line, and then we add a point, we'll say for a drain, a floor drain or something like that. What we had before was, I believe it was an interior edge was the subcomponent. Well, now what they've done is they've changed that. They've added 2 new subcomponents under floors. So we have folding lines and split lines. So we know that we can add a split line. So now we have control over that as to how we want to see it. And then the folding lines as well. The nice thing is that up on the ribbon, under the shape editing, they've added a convert lines tool, which just simply allows us to go back and forth between a folding line and a split line. So if I select the folding line, tell it to convert, converts it to a split line. If I have a split line and I select it, tell it to convert lines, it becomes a folding line. As you can see here in visibility graphics, we have a little more flexibility, and we can overwrite some of those properties in here. So that gives us greater flexibility in what we're looking at. This is another one that was a big deal for me when I was working, so this is why I like it. If you ever used a room schedule key or something like that, a style manager, style schedule, to handle a room, in the past, if you wanted to change one of the values in there, you would come up and you would switch that to none, and then you'd have to refill in everything. I'm just going to pop up in here to, let's see, let's come all the way up, and I'm going to open up this view, and I'm just going to select this dorm. Now, if for some reason it's all set, it's being controlled by a room style, which is my typical dorm. And in the past, if this one needed to be different, if one of these values down here needed to be changed, if I came up here and I didn't want to create a whole new style, if I came up and I hit none, all of these would go away, everything in here, and I would have to refill them all in. Now I can just pick the one that needs to change, and I can change the floor finish and go about without having to recreate additional style, like I said, or re-enter all that information. So I really like that they added that. Makes things a lot easier to work with. Another one that they've added involved with schedules is they've added a few more conditional formatting parameters. So we now have family, type, and family and type. And basically what that allows us to do is to change some of these conditional parameters so that we can view our schedules a little different, so that we can visually understand what we're looking at. It's a nice little feature. Once again, for structural, with the rebar cover, they've added the top face, bottom face, and other face. And this has all been built in for tagging and scheduling as well. So we can create a more comprehensive documentation for the concrete that we're using. Filter by sheets. Now this is another one that's about time that I really like. We've seen some improvements in sheets. Like for example, we can now split them across sheets. So with our schedules, which is really great. So we didn't have to duplicate schedules and do that. But we still had to do this if we wanted our views to look a little different. So I'm just going to pop back into this same project. I'm going to come down and let's look at, we'll look at this furniture plan that I have set up here. So in this furniture plan, by the way, I'm going to show you another feature here inside of Revit in 23 that they've done, and that's to swap views on a sheet. So whether I have one view or several views, if I had several views on here, it will retain the number 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, whatever that may be. But now I can select the view. Don't double click into it to activate, just select it. And up on the ribbon, I have some new tools. And one of them is Viewport Center or Origin. This is going to help me define how I swap this. I'm just going to say, leave it with Viewport Center. And then I get the drop down and I can say, what do I want to swap to? What view? I'm going to use my little new search here. I'm going to go to furniture and let's go to first floor building to furniture. And just like that, it changed the view. I did not have to delete the view and then drag another view on. This is really cool. I like this a lot. So let's look at the schedules. I was talking about schedules here. So I have a furniture schedule, and I can see that it's not colored in, so it hasn't been placed on a sheet. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it on the sheet here. There it is. And so we can see how this works. In the past, I would have to duplicate this schedule, make several to show with the different views. And so to bring this home, let's look at the standard twin size bed. Right now, I've got 282 of them because it is doing this for the whole project, okay? So all I have to do is come over to my browser, just activate the schedule. In my properties then, I can go to filter, and this is what's been added, filtered by sheet. Now watch the schedule itself. As soon as I select that, it's changed. Okay, it got shorter. If we go and look at the twin beds, it went from, I think it was like 282, something like that, 280 something, down to 24, because that is what is in this view. So we're just seeing what's in the view. And so even if I were now to go back and swap this view again, let's swap it one more time. I'm going to type in my furniture again. And this time, let's go to, yeah, we'll go to the third floor. Just going to swap that. And as soon as it's done, my schedule changed, and I am now at 32 beds. So this is really cool. I really like this. We can do this for anything. So I can do this for my door schedules, window schedules, whatever that is, and I don't have to duplicate and do filtering and make a whole bunch of different schedules to put on here. So something that I was really happy to see that they've added in here. This was another big one for me working in industry, and this was exporting to PDF and reordering the PDFs before I created the PDF file and being able to save it. So just coming back into the same file here is if I were to come on up in the quick access toolbar, and I'd have to double check. I believe this was put out as a point release, although I'm not entirely sure, but we have create PDF, and the window should look pretty familiar for the most part. I mean, it's sort of combined everything that we had. You know, here's the current window, selected views, however we want to do that. I switched this to in session. This now becomes more important, the location and the combining of the PDFs. Before, if I was using Bluebeam or Adobe, it would pop up when I created PDFs and say, where do you want this? Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create my list. So it's going to pop up here. I'm going to turn off my 2D and 3D views so I only have sheets. Right now, it is saying hide all unchecked views. So I'm going to uncheck that so I get to see all of my sheets here. And I'm actually just going to come down and say, you know, I want added in here my demolition, and I even want my landscaping sheet. Now I'm going to tell it to hide again so I don't see all the rest of these. So now what I want to do is I want to edit the print order. So I get another dialog. Now, if I had created some parameters so that my sheets came in order over here in my browser, I could tell it, hey, just use the browser organization. It's going to come up and say, hey, if you had put any manual order change in here, you're going to lose it right now. Okay, but now it is all set by discipline, and it goes the way that you want it to go. Now I can switch it to the sheet number, so the alphanumeric, right? And I still don't see my demo plans up here, so I'm just going to go to manual. And at this point, I can then select these. I'll even include my site. I just held my control key down, just came up to the top. I'm going to drop them in, and I'm just going to change them a little bit more again. There we go. Now, I like that, so that's good. I like it. I'm going to tell it to save as, and we'll just give it, we'll just call it test. So I've created that, and now I can say that it's asking me if I want to save it, but now I have test saved there. This is where it's going to create my PDFs. It's going to be combined. This would be the name. So if I want to change the name, and then this is how it prints. So everything else is the same. So this is really great. I don't have to go into Adobe or Bluebeam or something else and then reorder it. And this is here anytime I want to use it now. Okay, so it remembers that. Okay, swap views on sheets. I actually already showed you that. Fantastic tool. This is displace elements in 2D views. So we all know that we could displace elements in 3D views, but we couldn't do it in 2D views. Now, some of you may be going, well, why would I want to? Well, we can convey information a lot better sometimes when we break things apart. So when we're working in the 3D, that works exactly like we did before. We go up, we tell it to displace. We can grab the objects that we're displacing, do the paths back to that. Now, however, though, we could open up, say, a section view or something like that. We can grab an element, we can pull it out using the displace. And once we've displaced it in 2D, we can add the path back as well. Now, what's really nice here, though, is that I can go to the tag by category, and it can tag the displaced objects. So now I have a lot more flexibility in tagging, and even inside of the 3D objects when we displace, we had issues tagging, and we can now tag those displaced objects in 3D. We can also do that with our rebar. So we can now do displaced rebar, and we can tag that out as well. So some additional categories, taggable categories that they've included. Once again, this is kind of an about time, right? So we can do gutters, fascias, sweeps, pads, architectural columns, thank you. But what I really like is over in the parameters here that I've got up, we can now tag model groups and Revit links. This is a big deal, or can be a big deal. So this is a multi-family building I worked on once upon a time. And so I've got some model groups in here. And I actually do have some tagging. I had to jump through some hoops. This is actually a nurse call button. Now, don't make fun of me for doing it this way. I tried to come up with a solution so that I could schedule this, and I built this into the group so that I could add this properly. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. Now, we can tag using a multi-category tag. I've already brought one in. So, but you just bring in a multi-category tag, and I'm going to turn my leader off, and I can place the tag for the group. So now here is the tag. I'd already filled in some of the information. This particular tab is a combination of both instance parameters and type parameters. So I can either select the group, and we can see that I now have instance parameters with a mark, and I have type parameters that we're used to seeing with other things. I still have that IFC parameters as well. So I can either make my changes here, or I can select the tag itself, and I can make the changes. So this is my type mark, and if I were to just make these be 1.01 for argument's sake, I'm going to do that. It's telling me that I'm going to change the type of this particular group like you would anything else. And we can see that this group was the same over here, and it changed with it. So this is fantastic. This makes working with groups so much easier. As I mentioned, I can also do this with LinkedIn models. So I've actually linked in all my kitchens for this particular job so that I can, they're nested inside the group. So let me find it here. I know you're here somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to use my multi-leader tag. There it is. Okay, so it's come out. I'm going to place that. I can either select the link itself, and I've got some properties in here, the same with the type properties, or I can do it at the tag level. And I can go ahead and say, you know, give it a description or some sort of mark. And and say that, you know, what this is it's an SK, which is my, that's fine, yes, thank you, which is, it's going in and looking at, I have a lot of these linked in here through multiple floors, so it did that very quickly. Standard kitchen. And we'll come back and we'll say that. And so it updates the tag and adds this information in here as well. So I can use the same multi-category tag for both of the groups and the links. Pretty cool. Talking about multi-leader tags or tags, you know, last release we saw that we could add multi-leaders to this, which was fantastic. They've enhanced that now. So what we can do is that we can, there's been some added control up on the ribbon. So we can tell it to go to certain, you know, all have the same elbow point. We can actually hide instead of deleting some of the leaders, and then we can tell it to reset. It's a lot more versatility that has been built in here than what we've had in the past. This is another one of those, man, I can't believe it took so long for this to happen, right? So if you ever worked with the topography, with the topo, and you tried to use the Revit labeling tool, you'll remember that it would, in one direction, you'd see the text fine, and then it would flip the text over as you were going up and down your contours. This was incredibly frustrating. And now it all reads in the same direction. You know, about time, right? So this is really nice if you've ever had to label any of this. It's much more friendly. I mean, it works exactly the same way, but now you can read it all in the same direction. If you've ever worked with generic annotations, so for example, if you've used generic annotations to place electrical outlets and things of that nature in previous releases, when we tried to rotate and flip these and mirror them and all that kind of stuff, we would get what I would refer to as less than desirable results, right? Well, they've improved that in 2023, not less than desirable results, but now you can get the desired results. It's much friendlier. They simply work better than they have in previous releases. Another one that they've added, and I thought a lot about whether or not to put a star on this one, is the ability to add filled regions in our families. In the past, or pre-23, we could add masking regions to our families, but we could not add a filled region to our family. Now we can not only add a filled region, but we can decide whether it is a type or an instance parameter. So I could go through and I could take a chair, for example, and I could then add a filled region to that as an instance parameter. I could place that chair all over the place and change the fill pattern on it, depending on what I'm talking about or what information I'm trying to convey. This is really great. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to build a family, and I was sure wishing that I could, this is an earlier version, I was certainly wishing that I could add the fill pattern to that particular family. So this gives us a lot more flexibility in controlling our displays. They've also increased or enhanced view filters. So not only did they add some new filter constraints for us, you know, we've got base constraint, base offset, top constraint, and top offset, so we can use those to create filters. But we also now can add the subcategories, so we can do sweeps that have filters, and we can control the visibility and how that looks. I haven't really played with that one much myself, but I'm really looking forward to that, being able to work with a view filter that can pull out sweeps. So there's a lot of additional features that are in here. There's been all kinds of things that I wasn't able to go through. But but this is a very robust release from Autodesk 2023. So like I said, there's many features that I didn't get to. I mean, I talked about all of the steel shapes being put in. Well, they've also included all the British rebar shapes have all been updated. We can align couplers to create post-tensioning anchors, once again for structural fabrication. We can flip controls for fabricated parts, elevation controls for fabricated parts as well. We can server paths for material textures and details. So there's a lot of things in here. Design optimization, we didn't talk about the generative design at all, or Dynamo, but that whole interface has been cleaned up and is a lot nicer to work with. Were some additional structural analytical tools that we didn't get to. As far as cloud and data, that has been improved as well. So we can manage cloud models in the Revit home now. Better data exchanges, fabrication data manager that's in there. So there's a lot of stuff. We're coming to the end of our time here. So I've only got a couple of minutes left, but this release has got a lot in it. Like I said, there's something for everyone in here. And it's actually, from the looks of it and from what I've done with playing with it so far, it's really seemed to make life a little simpler in working with our models. Many of the releases in here are about time releases. I hate to say that, but that's how that is. But it's nice to see that more and more of the wish lists that we've asked for over the years have been getting answered. So with that, I'm basically out of time here.